The referendum in 2016 was an event which I assumed would be followed by the new Prime Minister reaching out to the losing side across party boundaries to obtain their acceptance of and consent to the result. But that didn't happen, and it became clear to me that the Prime Minister had no intention of pursuing that approach. It's deeply ironic that just today she tried to invoke the close 1997 devolution referendum in Wales in her Stoke speech, claiming that all parties accepted and backed the result at the time, when the Prime Minister was one of many on the other side, including the Shadow Secretary of State who spoke earlier, who now say a second referendum would be an abomination, but who voted against implementing that referendum's decision back in 1997. And the problem is, today's faux pas, Mr. Speaker, is so typical of the approach she's taken. Right from the start, she failed to seek to embrace the 48% who were on the Remain side and instead sought to pander to the most extreme Brexiteers on her side in her party. And in doing so, she characterised the negotiations with Brussels as a sort of poker game. I'm afraid that was always a false analogy, Mr. Speaker. I voted against triggering Article 50 because it was clear to me that this was not going to be like a card game at all. A better analogy was that of a football match where the other side is leading, so that all they need to do is to take the ball into the corner flag and hold it there until the final whistle blows. We wasted the time available on internal Tory squabbling when the Prime Minister should have been seeking consent and securing that, and the definitive proof of that was a snap election called for party political advantage in the middle of the process, which backfired spectacularly. The new Commons arithmetical reality meant that the Prime Minister would have to reach across the chamber for an agreed way forward, and she didn't. Well, except to the DUP, but purely on transactional terms. And so she continued on. No effort of real substance has been made until desperation set in to appeal to voters who supported Remain. Anyone who questioned the wisdom of taking this road were to be labelled as traitors or saboteurs or Ramoners or elitists. And today the Prime Minister talks of a subversion of democracy. When there was a narrow victory in the Welsh Referendum, a real effort was made to reach across to those who voted the other way, to ask them their ideas, to build safeguards to the new institutions, to assuage concerns to the extent that a decade later a second referendum was held, which overwhelmingly voted to increase the Assembly's power. But the Prime Minister, in contrast, regarded a narrow referendum result as permission to interpret Brexit however she wanted. Well, as a result of that, Mr. Speaker, as a result of that, we have leadership that's led us into a constitutional crisis. I read reports on the weekend of a 64-metre-long fatberg in Sidmouth in County Devon. And I apologise to honourable members for this analogy, but what we're facing in reality here is a sort of political fatberg which has to be dealt with. It'll be unpleasant and it'll be smelly to do so, but it has to be cleared up. And it's clear to me, increasingly clear to me, that clearing the blockade may require putting the options, including the option to Remain, back to the people for a final say if we're not to have a general election. Nothing has changed in the Prime Minister's approach in all that time, which is why we need a new Prime Minister and a Labour government to clear up this mess.
Thank you.